Man, looking back over everything that we've talked about so far, this is going to end up being a pretty heady podcast, I think.
Well, it's important that we sound smart. That's one of our goals every week.
Yeah, it's actually odd that I would say we're about to get heady, because we're talking about a science fiction fantasy author.
Yeah.
Gene Wolfe.
Yes.
Now, the reason I'm saying this is heady, I'm going to read two quotes here. First quote is from Joffrey Swaite, who said that if you think about the kind of authors that we like, Flannery O'Connor, Umberto Eco, where everything is significant, everything that's written into the story reveals something deeper, I already know we're heading into heady territory.
Yeah.
But to deepen that, I'm just reading a quote from an author, award-winning science fiction author, Michael Swanwick. This is what he says about Gene Wolfe. Gene Wolfe is the greatest writer in the English language alive today. Let me repeat that. Gene Wolfe is the greatest writer in the English language alive today. I mean it. Shakespeare was a better stylist. Melville was more important to American letters, and Charles Dickens had a defter hand at creating characters. But among living writers, there is nobody who can even approach Gene Wolfe for brilliance of prose, clarity of thought, and depth in meaning. Those are some mighty big words, little fella.
And, it sounds overblown. The language is overblown, but I can't bring myself to disagree with the basics of what he's saying. Gene Wolfe is so chewy. Everything is thought out to the smallest detail without ever bogging down. He is a great, great, great writer.
You've used the word chewy a lot to describe things, and it's a great word, but what do you mean by that in this sense?
But by chewy, I guess I always mean two things when I speak of art as being chewy. I mean that it's textured or layered, and I mean that it bounces back when you test that texture or layer. I think that his work is the sort that will stand the test of time. And what happens is, I discovered him recently. When people discover him, and when writers and great writers discover him, they are blown away, and they start comparing him to the greats who influenced them.
So maybe we should get to, you wanted to talk about a specific work.
Yes,
so tell us maybe an overview, The Wizard Knight. What is this?
Okay. It's a duology, 2 books, and it's complete in those 2 books. And it's the story of a young man, of a teenager, basically an American teenager, although you don't see anything of that life. It's written in the first person to his brother, who he can't really remember. And here he is in this cross between a medieval world and Norse mythology and maybe a touch of Greek mythology. It's all mashed together, and he becomes a knight and a wizard. The universe that he is set in is heroic, and this young man becomes heroic. The cosmology of the world is absolutely fascinating. It's the universe that this writer sets up, and of course the nice thing about being a fantasy or science fiction writer is that you get to create the entire universe. The cosmology is of 7 layers, 7 worlds, which suggests, for example, a lot of Norse mythology. So they live in Midgard. Human beings live in Midgard, in Middle-earth, which is a concept that a lot of people will be familiar with. And it is an old Norse concept that human beings live in the middle keep, in the middle place, and that there's stuff above and below, or outside, or however you want to put it. Above Midgard are the Norse gods and something above them. Below Midgard are the elves, who are elemental creatures, who are lower than the humans, and below them maybe the dragons. And there are 3 worlds above each. And watching how these worlds impact each other is full of significance for actually how we think of the place of human beings in our world.
So it sounds like he is trying to define a pretty specific worldview with higher places and lower places. Is that a fair word to use?
Yeah, he's a Roman Catholic writer, and you see a lot of that. There's a lot of Greek, kind of maybe a Platonic sort of feel to a lot of it. But I'm not sure I'm a fan of the word worldview. And the beauty of what Wolfe has done in these books is that he's set up a cosmology.
So what's the difference?
To me, the word worldview, and you and I run in circles that like to use that word a lot. And
right.
It's a fine word, as fine as it goes. as far as it goes. But the word worldview suggests an objective viewer, someone who can stand outside the world, look at it, and make decisions about it. A cosmology doesn't have to be physical. It is a map of the universe, but your cosmology is a map of the universe in all its senses, and its intellectual, philosophical, theological spaces, its spiritual spaces. Within the universe, your cosmology tells you where you are. There's a little "you are here" star somewhere in your cosmology. With a worldview, you don't have that.
So the cosmology more clearly defines your position in relation to the rest of...
Right, and that's a huge theme in The Wizard Knight.
Okay.
There are the human beings right in the middle. There are 3 worlds above them and 3 worlds below them. And the human beings are the most balanced. And it shows itself in all sorts of ways. So, for example, the further out you get from Midgard, the more the beings from those universes, from those worlds, can, for example, change their shape. So human beings can't really change their shape. Some might have the ability, but the further out you go from there, the more malleable the people are. And the suggestion is that it's not just malleable physically, but malleable in other ways. There's also this idea, the top world, you don't know anything about, but it's the purest world. And so as you fall down from it, almost in a sort of Platonic or Gnostic sort of way, as you fall down from that top world, the purity lessens.
Okay.
And human beings, again, are right in the middle. So obviously you can see the repercussions for what good and evil are within that can be fascinating. And the idea is, for example, the elves are below the human beings. So they're on the less pure side of the middle. But individuals can act for good or evil in any of the worlds, but their natures are good or evil intrinsically to the extent of the world they come from, if that makes sense.